The diaries of our federal politicians are a closed book. We really don't know who they're meeting with.
So it's actually difficult to trace the influence of particular groups.
If the same company is in there every single day, you'd say why.
It's different for some state and territory politicians. MPs in New South Wales, Queensland and the ACT published their diaries for the public to scrutinise.
Mining, property and construction, gambling are all ones that are heavily reliant on government decisions. We see that they tend to be big donators to political parties. When we're looking at state governments, we can see that those groups punch above their weight in terms of getting meetings with senior ministers.
Researchers say money opens doors.
The more money you have, the greater your ability to, as it were, pay to play.
In Canberra, there's a public register of donations, but political parties don't have to reveal who's behind donations that are less than $14,000. Parties don't have to aggregate smaller donations.
So about 40% of the private funds flowing into political parties we know nothing about.
Getting FaceTime with a minister or even a Prime Minister can make all the difference in lobbying a cause. Finding 5 minutes in a politician's diary is key. Simon Banks has been a political advisor, as well as a Chief of Staff or Deputy Chief of Staff for Simon Crean, Mark Latham, Kim Beazley and Kevin Rudd. As Chief of Staff, he was a gatekeeper.
Deciding who it's most important for them to meet with is very important. But one of the absolutely important things about being a Chief of Staff or any kind of political advisor is you are just that. You are an advisor. You are not the decision maker themselves.
There are around 500 registered lobbyists, and Simon is one of them. He has nearly 50 clients, lobbying on behalf of big organisations like the Commonwealth Bank, Amazon and Apple, as well as the Australian Energy Council.
If you're just asking for special favours for you or your industry, my experience is that they're not positions that survive over a very long period of time.
While Hawker Britton, who Simon works for, lobbies Labor, its sister company, Barton Deakin, lobbies the Liberal National Coalition. Peter Collins was the founder.
Those who think you can have politics without lobbying, it's like saying, can you have sport without competition?
Third-party lobbyists and firms at the federal level must disclose their clients and abide by a code of conduct.
You've got to be on the register. You've got to make clear just what your intentions are, and if you don't, then you're locked out, literally.
But as Peter Collins is no longer part of the firm and doesn't act for a third party, he's not on the register. Now, as Deputy Chair of Industry Super Funds, he can still use those lobbying skills and contacts.
There are, of course, lots of other people that are trying to influence government policy. People that you or I might think of as lobbyists, so someone working in a peak body like the Business Council or the Minerals Council, someone working in-house in a government relations role in a business or in a union, but they're not defined as lobbyists under the Australian Code.
More than 1,700 people have special access to Parliament House. Not all are lobbyists as defined by the Code. But they're easy to spot with their special orange security passes.
They meet regularly with parliamentarians, they're able to sort of run into people in the halls or the coffee shop in areas that are not accessible to the general public.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison called out these voices in his recent speech to the public service.
The vast majority of Australians will never come to Canberra to lobby government. These are your stakeholders, not the myriad of vested and organised interests that parade through this place.
Within 18 months after leaving Parliament, former ministers are not meant to lobby, advocate or have business meetings with government members in an area they've previously been responsible for.
If you breach the ministerial code of conduct and you're currently a minister, you can lose your ministerial position. If you're no longer a minister, the penalty of losing the ministerial position isn't much of a penalty at all.
A Senate inquiry is looking into how well politicians actually comply with the ministerial code. Christopher Pyne's new role as an advisor to EY and Julie Bishop's position with one of Australia's biggest aid contractors have recently come under scrutiny. The Grattan Institute says about 1/4 of ministers and assistant ministers have gone directly into special interest roles, and that nearly 40% of registered lobbyists are former government officials.
In the case of ministers, we actually think of it more as perhaps a golden escalator rather than a revolving door.
The lobbying code or the ministerial code, they are not even worth the paper they're written on.